The woman I married ended our 7-year marriage because she thought I wasn't rich enough. The woman who had loved me since childhood responded by grabbing my tie, pushing me onto a sofa, and kissing me until I forgot how to breathe. But that came later. First, I had to watch my wife bring another man to our anniversary dinner. At 7:30, I checked the food for the third time and sent Marissa another message. "Dinner's ready. Are you close?" No answer. The necklace box sat beside her plate. I had designed the piece myself. 7 small stones, each representing 1 year of marriage and 1 city where we had rebuilt a hotel project together. Boston, Charleston, Miami, Denver, Seattle, Chicago, New York. Our marriage, arranged in white gold. At 8:15, the front door opened. "Marissa?" She walked in wearing a black dress I had never seen. A diamond bracelet flashed on her wrist. Warren Price followed her. He removed his coat without being invited and glanced at the table. "Anniversary dinner?" he asked with a faint smile. "This is awkward." I looked at Marissa. "Why is he in our home?" She pressed her lips together, then placed a thick envelope beside my plate. "Sit down." "Gavin, I'm already standing in my own dining room. Answer the question." Her eyes narrowed. She had started looking at me that way 6 months earlier, as if every ordinary thing I did offended her. Warren pulled out a chair for her. Marissa sat. He remained behind her with one hand resting on the chair, playing the role of the man who belonged at her side. I looked at his hand, then at her. "You brought your investor to our anniversary?" "He's more than an investor." There it was. No trembling confession. No apology. She said it as if she were announcing a promotion. I sat across from her and opened the envelope. Divorce papers. Behind them was a proposed transfer agreement involving Cole House Hotels, Warren's commercial real estate fund, and a new holding company. I read 3 pages before looking up. "You've been sleeping with him?" Marissa's expression tightened. "Don't make this crude." Warren gave a soft laugh. "I think we're past pretending." "Marissa." She glanced at him, and something in her face softened. I remembered when she used to look at me that way. The memory hurt. I folded it away. "How long?" I asked. Marissa crossed her arms. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." "For months." Our anniversary dinner was suddenly the least insulting part of the evening. I nodded once. "And this?" I tapped the transfer agreement. Warren stepped forward. "My fund is prepared to invest up to $1 billion in Cole House. We'll take the brand international. London, Paris, Singapore, Dubai." Marissa lifted her chin. "Everything I've worked for. Everything we worked for." I corrected. She gave me a tired look. "You helped with operations. I designed the operating system. You solved problems behind the scenes. I rebuilt your first hotel after the previous management team walked out. I negotiated the labor agreement in Miami. I stopped the Charleston property from losing its liquor license. I found the accounting fraud in Denver." Warren adjusted his cuff link. "You're clearly talented, Gavin. No one is denying that. Then, why does your agreement transfer ownership of my work?" His smile paused. Marissa looked at the document. "The systems are part of the company." "No. They're licensed to the company. You signed the original agreement yourself." She pushed her chair back. "This is exactly why I can't do this anymore. Because I read contracts? Because everything with you is cautious, small, controlled." I stared at her. She gestured toward the dining room as if our home embarrassed her. "You drive the same car you bought 5 years ago. You refuse to buy a house in the Hamptons. You turn down opportunities because you don't want people to think you're chasing status. I turn down bad deals. You turn down life." Warren touched her shoulder. She did not move away. He said, "Marissa deserves a man who can open doors for her." I leaned back. "And you think that's you?" "I don't think it. I know it." Marissa looked directly at me. "Warren is giving me a Manhattan penthouse. I'll have access to his plane, his network, his investors. I'm done standing at events while other women look at me like I married the help." For several seconds, I could only hear the refrigerator humming. "The help," I repeated. She looked away first. I had spent 7 years protecting her company without demanding a title. I had refused offers from Whitaker International because Marissa wanted the world to believe Cole House was entirely hers. I had accepted being invisible because I thought the woman beside me saw me clearly. Apparently, she had only mistaken my restraint for failure. I picked up the necklace box and opened it. Marissa glanced at the stones. Her expression flickered. "What is that?" "Your anniversary gift." Her hand moved toward it. Almost instinctively, I closed the box. Warren's mouth curved. You'll get used to better jewelry. I ignored him and looked at Marissa. So you believe I don't have money? She sighed sharply. Whether you have a few investments doesn't matter. A few investments. You will never be Warren. You don't have his ambition, his influence, or his power. Warren smiled again. But I had reviewed his fund's public filings. The man had borrowed against borrowed money, inflated several property values, and tied 6 hotel assets to the same debt structure. He wasn't powerful. He was falling from a great height and hoping Marissa's company would break his landing. His fund is over-leveraged, I said. Marissa rolled her eyes. Of course you'd say that. 3 of his development projects are behind schedule. 2 lenders have requested additional guarantees. This billion-dollar investment isn't cash. He intends to secure it against Cole House assets. Warren's jaw tightened. You should be careful making accusations. They're observations. You know the difference. Marissa stood so quickly that the chair struck the floor. You can't stand that he believes in me. I believed in you before there was a company. No, Gavin. You wanted me dependent on you. You wanted to stay behind the curtain, so I'd never become bigger than you. I looked at the woman I had married and realized she had rewritten our entire history to make betrayal feel like courage. There was nothing left to argue about. I signed the divorce agreement. Marissa froze. That's it? You brought him into our home. What did you expect me to do? I thought you'd at least fight. For someone who already chose another man? Her face hardened. This is why you'll always lose. You don't fight for anything. I pulled the transfer agreement toward me, crossed out the intellectual property clause, and wrote a notice beneath it. Warren stepped closer. What are you doing? Terminating every license Cole House has to my crisis management platform. Marissa stared at me. You can't do that. I can. The license becomes revocable upon change of control, unauthorized transfer, or material breach. This is revenge. No, this is ownership. She snatched up the paper and read the clause. Her eyes widened. You would cripple my company over a divorce? Your company existed before the system. You told me I only handled minor problems. You'll be fine. Warren planted both hands on the table. Think carefully. You're angry now, but no major hotel group will hire a man known for sabotaging his wife's business. I met his eyes. You try to take property that doesn't belong to you. Don't confuse my refusal with sabotage. Marissa's lips curled. Without me, you won't even get into the next industry summit. I stood and picked up my jacket. I hope you enjoy the future you chose. I left with one suitcase, my laptop, and the necklace I had almost given her. I didn't break down that night. I called my attorney. I secured the development records. I froze all shared corporate access and transferred my personal files to an independent server. By 3 in the morning, the marriage was emotionally dead and legally contained. Then I sat on the edge of a hotel bed and stared at the unsigned anniversary card in my hand. Marissa had met me overseas, far from my family's reputation. She hadn't known what the heart name controlled. I had believed that meant she loved me without calculation. Now I understood that ignorance had only delayed the calculation. My brother, Ethan, called the next morning. I heard. News travels fast. Dad wants to send the family legal team. No, Gavin. My marriage. My work. My problem. Ethan was silent, then asked, Do you regret not telling her? I looked at the necklace box on the desk. If she'd known, she might have stayed. That's my point. It's mine too. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 potential clients postponed meetings. 2 former Cole House executives stopped returning calls. Then Marissa appeared in a business magazine beside Warren, smiling beneath a headline about their billion-dollar partnership. The article called me her former operations consultant. I almost laughed. 3 days later, I arrived in Chicago for the Global Hospitality Leadership Summit. At registration, a young event manager typed my name, went pale, and cleared his throat. Mr. Hart, there's been a change. What kind of change? Your credentials were withdrawn. By whom? Gavin. Marissa's voice came from behind me. She approached with Warren beside her. She wore the diamond bracelet again. This summit is for owners and senior industry leaders. She said, You should leave before this becomes embarrassing. Warren slid one hand into his pocket. Consider it professional advice. Walk away quietly. I looked at the nervous event manager, who authorized the change. Before he could answer, the conversations behind us stopped. A woman's heels struck the floor in slow, precise steps. Sloan Whitaker passed 3 board members without acknowledging them. She wore a white suit, her dark hair pulled back, her expression cold enough to silence the lobby. She stopped beside me and looked at the blank credential holder. Why isn't Gavin wearing his badge? The event manager swallowed. Ms. Whitaker, we were told his status had changed. By whom? Marissa stepped forward. He's no longer attached to a major hotel brand. Sloane turned her head. Marissa immediately lost some of her confidence. You believe Gavin needed your company to enter this room? Sloane asked. Marissa opened her mouth. Sloane continued. For 5 years, Whitaker International has used crisis standards built from his recommendations. He has saved properties your company couldn't afford to purchase. Warren forced a smile. This seems unnecessarily personal. Sloane looked at him. Your fund is exposed to 6 distressed hotel assets. I suggest you worry less about Gavin's invitation and more about your next audit. Warren's smile vanished. Sloane removed the main table card from her assistant's hand and gave it to me. The card read, Sloane Whitaker, Chair. She said, You're sitting with me. Marissa stared as Sloane took my arm and led me into the summit. 2 hours later, she ordered me into a private lounge and dropped a contract on the table. Equal authority, she said. Equity participation. You retain ownership of your systems. I read the first page. The terms were better than anything I had expected. I looked up at her. Are you offering this because you respect my work? Her expression remained flat. Obviously, or because you finally found me single. Sloane went completely still. A flush climbed from her throat to her cheeks. Then she snatched the contract from my hand and threw it onto the table. Sloane, she crossed the room, grabbed my tie, and pushed me backward onto the sofa. What the hell are you? She kissed me. It was fast, hard, and slightly unsteady. When she pulled away, her fingers were still wrapped around my tie. She turned her face aside, but I could see the red spreading to the tips of her ears. I waited long enough, she said. For the first time in my life, I looked at Sloane Whitaker and didn't see the girl who used to follow me through hotel hallways. I saw a woman who had just shattered the last thing I thought I understood. Sloane still had one fist wrapped around my tie. Her face was turned away, but the red in her ears had already betrayed the cold hotel queen who had just pushed me onto a sofa and kissed me. I touched my lower lip. You waited long enough for what? Her grip tightened. Don't make me explain it while I'm still this close to you. You kissed me. I'm aware. You nearly strangled me first. That was poor time management. I stared at her. Sloane. She released me and stepped back so quickly that she struck the edge of the table. The contract shifted. She caught it before it fell, straightened the pages, and arranged them with unnecessary precision. I've loved you for 15 years, she said. The humor left me. Sloane, and if you say I'm confused, lonely, or reacting to your divorce, I'll throw you out of my hotel. You own the building. Yes. That makes the threat efficient. I stood slowly. She finally looked at me. Her cheeks were still flushed, but her expression had hardened into the one she used when executives disappointed her. I asked, why now? Because Marissa left you. That sounds worse when you say it out loud. Her eyes narrowed. I didn't cause your divorce. I didn't interfere with your marriage. I never asked you to choose me while you belonged to someone else. I didn't belong to Marissa. You loved her. That was enough. I looked down at the partnership agreement. How long have you been planning this? The partnership? 6 months. The kiss. Her composure cracked again. That was not planned. You had a contract ready in a private room. I planned to offer you a job. And the part where you climbed on top of me? I did not climb on top of you. You pushed me down. You were asking insulting questions. So you answered with your mouth. She covered her eyes for 1 second. I hate you. No, apparently you don't. Her hand dropped. For a moment, she looked less like the most feared woman in the hospitality industry and more like the girl who used to follow me through the service corridors of her father's hotels. Then she said quietly, Do you remember the board dinner when I was 12? I remember your uncle humiliating you over a revenue number. You knocked over a glass. I was clumsy. You were 17 and had already spent summers working in hotel restaurants. You were never clumsy. I shrugged. Everyone was staring at you. That was the first time anyone protected me without telling me I was weak. I remembered finding her afterward on a back staircase, crying with both hands pressed over her mouth so no one would hear. I had pulled her to her feet. You can cry in front of me, I had told her. But tomorrow, you learn the numbers and go back in there. Sloane's voice softened. You made me memorize the entire quarterly report. You wanted your uncle to stop laughing. He never laughed at me again. That's because you became terrifying. That's because you taught me fear wasn't an excuse to stay down. I shifted my weight. suddenly uncomfortable with how clearly she remembered every word. She continued, "When I was 15, an employee's son needed heart surgery. My father's executives rejected the request because the family wasn't covered by the emergency fund. I remember, you gave them your entire investment bonus. It wasn't that much. It was everything you had earned that year. The kid needed it more. I asked you why you cared about someone you barely knew. I knew what came next before she said it. You told me that people with real power should do more than improve their own lives." I looked at her. She gave a small, humorless smile. "That was when I decided I wanted to become someone you could respect. I've always respected you." "No. You protected me. You advised me. You rubbed my head and called me a kid. You were a kid. I stopped being one a long time ago." The memory of her kiss returned with uncomfortable clarity. I cleared my throat. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I tried." "When?" "The day you left for school in Switzerland." I frowned. "You came to the airport with a letter in my purse." She folded her arms tightly. "Before I could give it to you, you told your parents you wanted to meet someone who didn't know the heart name and didn't care about your family's money." I remembered being 23 and arrogant enough to believe that hiding part of myself was the same as finding something pure. Sloane looked away. "Then you messed up my hair and promised to bring your little sister a gift." I winced. "I said that? In front of your entire family. That was insensitive. It was devastating. I didn't know. That was the problem. Gavin, you never looked closely enough to know." Her voice carried no accusation this time, only exhaustion. I asked, "What happened to the letter?" "It's in a safe." "You kept it?" "I also kept the ridiculous wooden horse you gave me when I was 9. I'm sentimental. Don't tell anyone." I almost smiled, but the weight in my chest stopped me. "You should have moved on." I tried. "With anyone?" She gave me a flat stare. "That is not your business." The answer irritated me more than it should have. Sloane noticed. One corner of her mouth lifted. "Interesting. Don't. You're jealous already. I'm recently divorced." That wasn't a denial. I walked to the table and picked up the contract. "I can't give you what you want." Her smile vanished. "I spent 7 years believing Marissa loved me. She met me without the family name, without the money, without anyone telling her I was worth pursuing. And she still betrayed you." "Exactly." Sloane's chin lifted. "So you think love doesn't exist because one woman failed at it?" "I think my judgment might be worthless. That is not the same thing. I don't know what I feel right now. Anger, humiliation, relief. Sometimes all three before breakfast. I'm not asking you to marry me. You just assaulted me with a confession. I kissed you, without warning. You were being annoying, despite myself." I laughed once. Sloane watched me carefully. Then she pushed the contract toward me. "Work with me." I looked at the signature line. "You expect me to pretend the kiss didn't happen?" "No. I expect you to think about it constantly." "Sloane, but you don't have to date me. Learn who I am now. Decide whether you can see me as something other than your childhood responsibility. And if I can't." Her face tightened, but she didn't look away. "Then reject me honestly." I signed the partnership agreement. Our first assignment was North Star Crown Hotels, a failing international group with debt-heavy properties in New York, London, and Vancouver. At the opening board meeting, Director Wallace glanced at my resume and leaned back. "We need a recognized restructuring firm, not Ms. Whitaker's childhood friend." Sloane closed her folder. "Tell us how many international hotel groups you've saved from insolvency." Wallace blinked. "That isn't the point." "It is exactly the point. I'm asking whether Mr. Hart's appointment is based on qualifications or personal loyalty." Sloane stood. "Until you can demonstrate stronger qualifications, you are not qualified to judge his." Wallace's face reddened. "You can't end the discussion because I asked a question. I'm ending it because you arrived without evidence." Meeting adjourned. Outside the boardroom, I caught her arm. "You can't execute everyone who questions me." "I didn't execute him. You fired him from the recovery committee. He was slowing us down." "You enjoyed it." "A little." She pulled free, then straightened my tie. Her fingers paused near my collar. Neither of us moved. She whispered, "This is the same tie. The one you used as a weapon?" Her hand jerked away. Later that week, reporters crowded the hotel entrance after word of our partnership became public. Sloane pushed me into the back seat of her car, followed me inside, and suddenly sat across my lap. I caught her waist. She went rigid. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Avoiding the cameras. There's an empty seat beside me. They can see through that window. They can see you sitting on me through this one." Her gaze dropped to my hands on her waist. "Gavin, you're shaking." "I am not. You're sitting on my leg, and barely breathing. She leaned closer, her expression threatening even as her cheeks turned pink. "Say one more word, and I'll buy this car company just to have the vehicle destroyed. Move first." She stayed there for another 10 seconds. Then she climbed off me, faced the opposite window, and refused to speak until we reached her penthouse. We worked past midnight. When I stood to leave, Sloane walked over, loosened my tie, and pulled it from my collar. "You're staying." I looked at her hand. "That line would sound more convincing if you weren't blushing. The guest room is down the hall." She shoved my tie against my chest and walked away. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen glaring at a ruined stack of pancakes. "You cooked?" "No." "You're holding a spatula." The staff made errors. The chef stood behind her, visibly fighting a smile. Sloane pointed at him. "You're fired. He didn't cook these," I said. Then he failed to stop me. I tasted one pancake. It was burned outside and raw inside. Sloane watched my face. "Well, I've survived worse hotel disasters." She hit my arm with a dish towel. For the first time since my divorce, I laughed without forcing it. The moment didn't last. 3 days later, Marissa appeared on a business podcast and accused me of withholding Cole House property after becoming involved with Sloane. By noon, my attorney had 6 calls from reporters. Sloane's legal director placed a defamation complaint on my desk. "We file today," she said. I closed it. "No." Sloane's eyes sharpened. "She publicly accused you of theft. I'll prove the work is mine. My lawyers can ruin her. I don't need you to ruin her." Silence filled the office. Then Sloane asked, "You think letting you fight means I'm not protecting you?" "I think protecting me means letting me stand." Her expression changed. "That's what you did for me," she said. At the arbitration hearing, we produced dated development files, invoices, licensing agreements, and messages in which Marissa had acknowledged my ownership. Marissa stared at the evidence, then at Sloane beside me. "You planned this," she snapped. "You revoked the system because you were already sleeping with her." I leaned toward the microphone. "You brought Warren into our home and handed me divorce papers on our anniversary. Do not rewrite the order of events because the truth embarrasses you." The arbitrator ruled entirely in my favor. Outside, Marissa blocked my path. "Warren's funding has been delayed," she said. "Give Cole House a temporary license." "No, Gavin. People will lose their jobs. You removed the transition protections after Warren told you they reduced valuation." Her lips parted. I had guessed correctly. "You said I only fix minor problems." I continued. "Now you can prove it. You're vindictive. Consequences aren't revenge." That evening, Warren met me alone in the hotel bar. He placed an offer across the table. A shell company wanted to purchase my system for $80 million. I slid it back. "No." His polite expression disappeared. "You think Sloane's protection makes you untouchable?" "No. I think your balance sheet makes you predictable." He leaned closer. "You should have signed the transfer agreement." My phone rang before I could answer. It was my attorney, Gavin, he said, his voice tight. "Someone submitted records showing you moved $4 million out of the North Star renovation account." I didn't. "I know, but the authorization contains your certified digital signature." Across the table, Warren lifted his glass and smiled. That was when I understood the offer had never been a negotiation. It had been a warning. The forged transfer carried my digital signature, authorization code, and a timestamp placing me inside North Star Crown's finance system at 2:13 a.m. At 2:13 a.m., I had been asleep in Sloane's guest room while she threatened to fire her kitchen staff over pancakes. That would not satisfy a board. By 8 the next morning, 6 directors were demanding my suspension. Director Wallace slapped the transfer onto the table. $4 million disappeared into an account connected to the Hart family. "How much more evidence do you need?" Sloane looked at me. "Did you move it?" "No." "Authorize anyone else?" "No." She turned back to Wallace. "Then Gavin remains in charge. You believe him without an investigation?" "I believe he didn't steal. I still intend to examine every account and certificate involved." Marissa used to call trust the absence of questions. Sloane trusted my character without abandoning reason. After the meeting, I followed her into her office. "You defended me too aggressively. You asked me to let you stand. You also threatened 2 directors. They were wasting time." I noticed her hand trembling and caught her wrist. "You're scared." "I m'engage." Sloane, her shoulders lowered. "If the signature holds, you could face criminal charges." "It won't." "I know." You just said you were investigating. She met my eyes. Evidence can tell me how he framed you. It doesn't have to tell me who you are. I almost kissed her. Instead, I released her hand. Pain crossed her face before she turned away. Right, she said. Back to work. We traced the certificate to an old coal house server. Only Marissa, her technology chief, and two consultants hired by Warren had access. I asked Marissa to meet me. She arrived with Warren. I pushed the report across the table. Someone copied my certificate from your server. Marissa barely read it. You expect me to believe Warren framed you? Warren smiled. This is desperation. Check the access records. You're trying to ruin him because North Star is failing. North Star's occupancy is up 12%. Sloan entered and placed another file beside mine. Price Capital delayed funding on 3 coal house properties this morning. Marissa turned to Warren. You said the transfer was processing. It is. When? His smile disappeared. Don't discuss financing in front of them. Sloan looked him over. You don't have financing. You have debt wearing an expensive suit. Marissa reddened. Stay out of my relationship. I raised one hand. She won't listen yet. Marissa glared at me. At least Warren never hid who he was. No, I said. He hid what he owed. 2 days later, a reporter uncovered my identity. By lunch, every business channel had my family tree on screen. The Hart family's stakes in resorts, aviation, real estate, and logistics made my personal holdings worth more than Warren's entire fund. Marissa called 12 times. On the 13th, she appeared in my office and threw a magazine onto my desk. You lied to me. I never called myself poor. You said your family was comfortable. They are. You could have bought Coal House. I could have. Her eyes filled. Then why did you let me struggle? I worked beside you for 7 years. You watched me beg investors. You told me you wanted the company to be yours. You could have given me everything. I gave you my systems, my contacts, and my marriage. You're angry because I didn't give you a number large enough to brag about. She reached for me. If I had known, I never would have left. I stepped back. That is why I didn't tell you. So our marriage was a test. No, we lived well. I simply refused to purchase your love with family money. Warren manipulated me. He offered you a penthouse and a plane. You chose before checking whether his promises were real. I loved you. I believe you did. Hope flashed across her face. And then you decided my love was worth less than his lifestyle. She began crying. We can fix this. I placed our signed divorce agreement between us. You brought this to our anniversary dinner. I made a mistake. No, you compared 2 men and chose the one whose bank account looked larger. Her gaze shifted toward the door. You're with Sloan now. Not yet. The answer hurt more than I expected. She's using your divorce to get what she always wanted. The door opened. Sloan stood there, expression cold. If I were using his weakness, he would already be in my bed. I turned toward her. Color rose in her cheeks. But she continued. I want him. I'm not ashamed of that. But I won't take a decision from him because you damaged his ability to make one. Marissa left without another word. Sloan walked toward me. Stop asking the wrong woman to prove love exists. That isn't fair. No. Waiting 15 years while you looked through me wasn't fair. Her voice trembled. Every time I get close and you step away, I become 12 again. I start wondering what I have to accomplish before you finally see me. I moved toward her. She raised one hand. Don't kiss me because you're hurting. I wasn't. Yes, you were. Her eyes shone. I can survive you rejecting me. I cannot survive becoming your medicine. She walked out. That night, I stopped thinking about what Sloan had done for me. I started thinking about what she refused to take. The next morning, we found the break in Warren's scheme. His fund had inflated hotel values, borrowed against the same assets twice, and planned to use Coal House as fresh collateral. He needed my system to create convincing performance forecasts, so we offered him access. A former consultant contacted one of Warren's shell companies. Warren's representative transferred a deposit and sent instructions referencing the forged North Star authorization. Security footage also showed a Price Capital contractor entering North Star's finance office the night my certificate was used. Marissa discovered the rest herself. She confronted Warren during an investor presentation. Sloan and I entered with 2 federal investigators as Marissa slammed a financing agreement onto the table. You mortgaged every Coal House property. Warren remained calm. You signed the documents. You said it was temporary. You wanted global expansion. Expansion has a cost. You told me you loved me. He gave her a bored look. I told you what you needed to hear. Marissa slapped him. Warren grabbed her wrist. I crossed the room and removed his hand. Touch her again, and fraud won't be your immediate problem. He sneered. Still protecting the woman who left you? I'm stopping an assault. Don't confuse decency with forgiveness. The investigators presented the warrant. Warren pointed at Marissa. She approved everything. Marissa turned to me, terrified. Gavin, tell them. I handed over a file. These later authorizations were forged. She was reckless, but those signatures aren't hers. Marissa whispered, thank you. I did it because facts matter. Warren was arrested before the presentation ended. Price Capital collapsed within days. Creditors seized Cole House. And Marissa lost the company she had traded our marriage to expand. At North Star Crown's reopening, she found me in a private corridor and dropped to her knees. Please, Gavin, I have nothing. I pulled her up. Don't kneel. Then come home with me. There is no home. We can start again. You had my love for 7 years. I know. No. You knew its price. You just thought Warren could pay more. Behind her, Sloane stood near the ballroom doors. She met my eyes and turned away. She was leaving the choice to me. Again, I stepped past Marissa and caught Sloane's hand. Marissa whispered, so she wins? I faced her. She waited for me and never demanded I belong to her. You had my heart and treated it like something you could trade. Her lips trembled. Is that it? Yes. No one is waiting for you anymore. I led Sloane into the elevator. She stared at our joined hands. You're still holding me. I know. People saw. I know. Her ears turned pink. I leaned closer. She looked at my mouth. Then fear tightened my chest. And I stopped. Sloane slowly pulled her hand away. I accepted the European restructuring assignment. My stomach dropped. For how long? At least a year. When do you leave? Friday. She faced the doors and rebuilt the expression everyone else feared. I think it's time I stopped waiting. Sloane stopped waiting before I understood how much I had depended on finding her beside me. She did not disappear after announcing the European assignment. That would have been easier. She attended every North Star meeting, reviewed every operating report, and challenged my decisions with the same cold precision as before. But she stopped touching my tie. She stopped ordering me into her car. She stopped finding reasons to work late at her penthouse. She also stopped looking at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. On Wednesday morning, I entered the conference room and found a different executive sitting beside my chair. Where's Sloane? I asked. The man looked startled. Ms. Whitaker is meeting with the European transition team. She didn't tell me. Her assistant, Claire, lifted one eyebrow. Mr. Hart, she is not required to report her personal schedule to you. It's a project schedule. Then you can find it in the shared calendar. Claire returned to her tablet. She had worked for Sloane too long. Even her insults were professionally formatted. After the meeting, my brother Ethan called. You sound irritated, he said. I'm working. That's not a denial. Sloane leaves Friday. I heard. From whom? Her father. I stopped walking. Why were you talking to her father? Our families have known each other for 30 years. That doesn't answer the question. Ethan laughed. You're jealous of a 64-year-old married man now? I'm not jealous. You also said that when she spoke to the European hotel heir. That rumor was strategic nonsense. You almost crushed a champagne glass. It was poorly made. There was a pause. Then Ethan said, you didn't chase Marissa when she left. That was different. Exactly. You knew your marriage was over. You're panicking over Sloane because you already think she belongs in your life. She accepted a job for a company she owns for at least a year. Planes exist. Gavin, that isn't the point. No. The point is you want her to arrange her life around your fear while you refuse to call it love. I ended the call, not because he was wrong, because he was enjoying being right. That afternoon, North Star Crown released its final recovery report. Revenue had stabilized. Staff turnover had fallen by almost 40%, and the company had secured refinancing without surrendering control to an outside fund. The board offered me a permanent executive position. I declined and announced the formation of Heart Crisis Hospitality. My new company would partner with Whitaker International, but Sloane would not own it. My family would not control it. I had rebuilt my career on terms that belonged entirely to me. Everyone congratulated me. I kept looking toward the empty chair at the end of the table. Sloane had already left for the Whitaker estate to collect documents before her flight. I drove there after the meeting. She was in her father's study, standing beside 2 packed suitcases while signing a stack of transfer papers. She looked up. You should be celebrating. I came to see you. Her pen paused. That's unusually direct. Don't make this difficult. I've spent 15 years making things easy for you. The words landed harder because she said them without anger. She signed the last page and handed me a folder. These are the final North Star partnership records. Your company's independence is protected. Whitaker International cannot absorb your intellectual property without unanimous approval. You wrote that clause? Yes. Even though you control the board, I wanted you to know that loving me would never cost you ownership of your work. I put the folder down. Why are you leaving? Her expression remained calm. Because Europe needs restructuring. Sloan. And because I need distance, I stepped closer. From me? From waiting for you. She opened a drawer and removed a small envelope. The paper had yellowed at the edges. My name was written across the front in handwriting I recognized from childhood. What is this? The letter I tried to give you at the airport. I looked at her. You kept it all this time. I told you I did. Why give it to me now? Because I don't want to carry it into another decade. I opened the envelope. The letter had been written by a 19-year-old Sloan who had tried to sound fearless and failed. She wrote that she wanted me to stop treating her like a child. She wrote that she was studying hotel operations because she wanted to stand beside me, not behind me. The final lines were simpler. Even if Gavin never chooses me, I hope he finds someone who loves the person he is when nobody important is watching. I hope she never makes him feel that his kindness is something small. I read those words twice. You wrote this before I met Marissa. Yes. You knew what my family had. Yes. You knew I wanted to hide it. I knew you wanted to be seen without it. And you never told me. Her lips curved sadly. You were excited about leaving. I didn't want my feelings to become a weight you carried onto the plane. You watched me marry someone else. You loved her. You could have stopped me. Sloane's eyes hardened. That is not love, Gavin. She moved closer and pressed one finger against my chest. I didn't have the right to destroy your happiness just because I wanted it for myself. I wasn't happy in the end, but you were when you married her. I had no answer. She touched my cheek, and the strength in her expression finally cracked. You once told me I was allowed to cry in front of you. Her thumb moved once against my skin. I wish you had learned that you were allowed to be afraid in front of me. I am afraid. Of what? That what I feel is gratitude. She lowered her hand. That's fair. That I only want you because you're leaving. Also fair. That one day you'll realize you waited for a man who doesn't exist anymore. Her eyes filled, but she refused to look away. I never waited for a perfect man. I'm not finished. She went still. I'm afraid that I'll trust you. And then one day you'll decide I'm not worth the life you could have with someone else. Sloan inhaled slowly. Marissa did not betray you because you were unworthy. I know that logically, but not here. She placed her palm over my heart. No, she nodded. Then I can't fix that for you. My chest tightened. I didn't ask you to. You're asking me to wait while you decide whether my love is safe enough. That isn't what I meant. It is what you're doing. She stepped back. I want you to choose me because you love me. Not because I protected your company. Not because I waited. Not because your ex-wife taught you to be lonely. Sloan, I'm choosing myself now. She picked up her coat. I wanted to tell her not to leave. The words reached my throat and stopped. She noticed. Of course she noticed. A faint, wounded smile crossed her face. Goodbye, Gavin. She walked past me. I stood alone with the letter in my hand. Marissa called that evening. I almost ignored it, but something in me wanted to close every door before I opened another. She asked me to meet her at a small coffee shop near Grand Central. When I arrived, she looked different without the jewelry Warren had given her. Her hair was tied back, and she held a paper cup with both hands. I accepted the settlement. She said, the creditors will take what's left of Cole House. I heard. I'm moving to Philadelphia. A hotel group offered me a regional operations job. That's a good position. She laughed bitterly. You always did know how to make failure sound survivable. Failure usually is. She studied me. Did you love Sloan while we were married? No. The answer came without hesitation. Marissa's eyes closed briefly. Not even a little. I was loyal to you, so I can't blame her. No. She gets everything anyway. I leaned back. Sloan gets a man who still flinches when someone says they love him. She gets my suspicion, my damaged judgment, and the part of me that expects affection to disappear when a better offer arrives. Marissa swallowed. You love her. I looked at the faded letter in my hand. Yes. Saying it aloud did not feel like falling. It felt like finally standing still. Marissa wiped beneath one eye. If she didn't exist, Could you forgive me? No. Her face tightened. She isn't the reason our marriage ended. You ended it when you decided another man's promises mattered more than the life we built. I did love you. I know. That doesn't help. It shouldn't. She looked down at her cup. I'm sorry, Gavin. For the first time, I believe she understood what she had lost. It changed nothing. I hope you build something honest next time. I left before she could ask me to stay. Outside, I called Claire. When does Sloane's flight leave? You should know. It's in the shared calendar. Claire. She boards in 40 minutes. Which terminal? There was a pause. Then Claire gave me the private departure gate. Mr. Hart? Yes. If you make her cry, and then let her get on that plane, I'll help her acquire your company just to fire you. I thought the contract prevented that. I'll find a way. I reached the airport as Sloane's assistant handed her a passport and travel folder. Sloane. She stopped. Several people turned, but she did not. I called her name again. This time she faced me. Her expression was controlled, but her fingers tightened around the handle of her bag. You have a board dinner, she said. I canceled it. You never cancel meetings. I've made worse decisions. Her assistant took 2 steps back. I held up the letter. You kept this for 12 years? Almost 13. You counted? I had time. I stopped in front of her. You watched me leave, fall in love, and marry someone else. Her jaw tightened. We discussed this. You never tried to damage my marriage. No. You never used your family to pull me back. No. You gave Marissa fair opportunities even though you hated seeing us together. I didn't hate her at first. When did that change? When she started making you apologize for being kind. My throat tightened. You knew me when I was the hard air. Yes. You knew me when I wanted to pretend I wasn't. Yes. You saw the husband who failed to notice his marriage collapsing. You didn't fail. You trusted your wife. You saw me after she left. I saw you before she arrived. I stepped closer. You said you waited long enough. Sloane lifted her chin. So you don't have to wait anymore. She stared at me. I put one hand against her cheek. Tell me to stop. Her breathing changed. I won't. I kissed her. For 1 second, she did not move. Then both hands gripped my coat, and she pulled me closer with enough force to make me stumble. The woman who could silence a room full of investors made a small sound against my mouth and immediately tightened her fingers as if embarrassed by it. When I pulled back, her cheeks were red. Nearby passengers were watching. Sloane buried her face against my chest. I laughed softly. You pushed me onto a sofa the first time. Be quiet. You were much more confident then. I had rehearsed being angry. You said the kiss wasn't planned. The anger was. I wrapped my arms around her. She remained against me for several seconds before asking, Are you sure this isn't gratitude? No. Her body stiffened. I lifted her face. I'm not sure it isn't part of it. I'm not sure fear isn't part of it either. Hurt entered her eyes. But when I imagine you leaving, I don't feel grateful. I continued. I feel like I'm losing the woman I love. She stopped breathing. I love you. Sloane. Her eyes filled instantly. You took an unreasonable amount of time to say that. I was emotionally delayed. You were an idiot. Also true. She wiped at her cheek, annoyed by the tears. I smiled. You're allowed to cry in front of me. And tomorrow? Tomorrow you can make the European board regret questioning you. She laughed through the tears. My plane leaves in 20 minutes. I know. I'm still going. I know. Her expression became cautious. You're not asking me to abandon the project? No. I'm coming with you for the first week. You have a company. I hired competent people. You don't trust competent people. I trust Ethan enough to complain when he makes mistakes. Sloane narrowed her eyes. And after the first week, we stop arranging our lives around waiting. We make decisions together. You're not going to call me your little sister? Never again. You won't expect me to stand behind you? I want you beside me. Her mouth trembled. Then she grabbed my tie and kissed me again. 6 months later, Heart Crisis Hospitality and Whitaker International reopened the first European property we had rebuilt together. Sloane remained ruthless in meetings. In private, she continued making bold decisions and regretting them immediately. She sat on my desk during conference calls and ordered me to pay attention to her, then blushed whenever I placed a hand on her knee. She once threatened to purchase a restaurant after a waitress flirted with me. It has strong investment potential, she claimed. The restaurant lost money last year. I could improve it. You don't even like the food. You dislike the stick. At the reopening of the hotel, where she had completed her first front desk rotation, I asked her to meet me in an empty conference room. A jewelry box waited on the table. She opened it and immediately frowned. This looks like the necklace you made for Marissa. It isn't. You reused the setting. I melted it down. Her fingers paused over the single stone in the center. The old necklace represented 7 years already lived. I said, this represents the first year I finally saw you. Her expression softened. Then suspicion returned. Is this a proposal? Not yet, Gavin. I let her glare at me for 10 seconds. Then I took the ring from my pocket. Her eyes widened. I wanted to know whether the hotel queen could be patient. She hit my shoulder. That was cruel. You survived. Barely. I took her hand and lowered myself onto one knee. The tears returned before I could speak. Sloane Whitaker, I'm not asking because you waited for me. Her lips parted. I'm not asking because you protected me or because our families expect it. I'm asking because you know every part of me I tried to hide, and you never demanded that I become someone easier to love. She covered her mouth. I want to stand beside you. I want to argue with you, build with you, and spend the rest of my life watching you terrify executives and burn breakfast. I improved the pancakes. They remain legally questionable. She laughed, then cried harder. Will you marry me? Yes. I smiled. I wasn't finished. I waited long enough. She pulled me to my feet and kissed me before I could place the ring on her finger. When the staff outside began applauding through the glass wall, Sloane turned red and hit against my chest. I whispered, you said you wanted me to see you. Not while I'm crying. Then take your time. She looked up. This time, she did not hide. Years earlier, I had crossed an ocean looking for a woman who could love me without knowing my name, my wealth, or the life I could provide. I had been asking the wrong question. Sloane knew all of it. She knew my pride, my fear, my mistakes, and the parts of me that were not impressive. And she loved me without asking me to pretend any of them did not exist. She touched the ring and smiled. You took long enough to catch up. I kissed her forehead. But I'm not making you wait again.